Life has a way of disguising battles as blessings. And when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, it don't come wrapped in red flags. It comes wrapped in charm. Smooth words, big promises. You feel seen, like someone finally gets you. They love bomb you, tell you you're the best thing that ever happened to them. And for a moment, you believe it. You let your guard down. You open your soul. But then the mask slips. And when it does, it's not just the relationship that changes, it's you. Suddenly, your joy becomes ammunition. Your confidence, a threat. Your dreams, too loud. Your voice, too much. So you start to shrink. You tiptoe around their moods like a landmine, hoping today won't be the day they explode or withdraw. You tell yourself, maybe if I love harder, maybe if I'm more understanding, maybe then they'll see me. But they don't. Because they're not looking at you, they're looking for control. And here's the part no one talks about. It's not just the yelling, the cold shoulders, the manipulation. It's the silence, the gaslighting, the way they twist your words and make you doubt your own mind. It's waking up and wondering, is it me? Am I the problem? But I want you to hear me when I say it was never you. You were loving, you were loyal, you were real. You just gave your heart to someone who didn't know how to hold it. That storm, it wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. Because it wasn't just about a broken heart, it was about an attack on your identity. The enemy saw your light, your purpose, your calling, and he used a counterfeit connection to try and dim it. But you made it through. You're here, breathing, standing. Maybe not fully healed yet, but stronger than you've ever been. You didn't just survive the storm, you outgrew it. That's why it had to end. Because you were too big for the cage they built around you. And let me tell you something real. Storms don't come to stay, they come to clear the path. That storm you went through, it was loud, it was painful, but it revealed what was fake. It shook loose what wasn't meant to stay. And now you've got clarity. Now you've got power. Now you've got the wisdom to never settle for crumbs when you were made for the feast. You thought you were alone, and I mean really alone, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, soul deep alone. Like you were shouting underwater and nobody could hear you. You'd wake up with that tightness in your chest, like a weight pressing down on you, and still force yourself to smile. You played strong, you wore that mask, you showed up for everybody, but behind closed doors you were breaking piece by piece. You know what that kind of loneliness does? It makes you question everything, your worth, your sanity, your faith. You'd pray and it felt like the heavens were silent. You'd cry and it seemed like nobody noticed. You were surrounded by people, but nobody saw you. But God did. See, just because God is silent doesn't mean he's absent. He was there in the moment you collapsed on the floor. He was there in the car when the tears came without warning. He was in the room when they gaslit you and you had no words left. When you had nothing but breath in your body and a whisper of a prayer, he caught every word. He understood the language of your tears. People may have turned their backs on you. They may have said you're being dramatic or just get over it. They didn't understand the depth of what you were dealing with, but God, he saw the manipulation. He saw the emotional warfare. He saw how you kept loving even when you were starving for it in return. And he never judged you for staying too long. He never rolled his eyes when you went back, hoping this time they'd change. He knew your heart. He knew your hope, and he stayed right there in the pain, in the silence, in the struggle. Because that's what a father does. God was never waiting for you to be perfect. He was just waiting for you to realize you were never alone, that you were being protected even when you thought you were being punished, that he was allowing certain people to leave, not to break you, but to bless you, that isolation wasn't rejection, it was preparation. It was him clearing the room so he could talk to you without the noise. Every unanswered call, every closed door, every no you didn't understand, it was him pulling you out, lifting you up, whispering, daughter, son, this is not your final chapter. You thought you were alone, but God was walking beside you even when your legs couldn't carry you anymore. He was your strength in the silence, your peace in the storm, your anchor when everything else felt like it was drifting away. Pain is a strange teacher. It doesn't knock on the door and ask for permission. It kicks it down and makes itself at home. And when it comes through, it doesn't leave things the way it found them. Pain rearranges your perspective. It forces you to see things you didn't want to see. And that's exactly what it did when you loved a narcissist. It stripped away the illusion. It showed you that not all love is love. That sometimes what feels like affection is actually control. That some people don't want connection. They want possession. And you learn that the hard way. You learn by giving the best of yourself to someone who kept moving the goalpost, shifting the narrative, rewriting reality to suit their own ego. You loved deeply, but they used your love as leverage, as a tool, as a weapon. But even in that pain, especially in that pain, there was purpose. Because here's the truth, your spirit didn't get weaker, it got wiser. Your discernment didn't die, it got sharper. You started seeing through smiles that weren't sincere. You started catching the tone beneath the words. You noticed the patterns, the cycles, the subtle manipulations. And you began to realize, this isn't love, this is survival. That realization right there, that's the turning point. That's the moment the lesson takes root. And it's not about bitterness. It's not about revenge. It's about clarity. It's about knowing who you are and what you deserve, and never again settling for less. Pain opened your eyes. It awakened a version of you that was buried under compromise, a version of you that now stands taller, speaks louder, and loves smarter. And let's not forget, there's a certain kind of strength you can't fake. The kind that comes from crying yourself to sleep and still showing up the next day. The kind that comes from trusting someone who betrayed you and still choosing to forgive for your peace, not theirs. The kind that comes from being shattered but refusing to stay broken. That strength, that's divine. That's forged in fire. So yes, it hurt. Yes, it broke you, but it also built something in you, something unshakable, something unbreakable. That narcissist thought they were winning while tearing you down, but God was using it to build you up. Every moment of confusion, every ounce of pain, it was molding you, refining you, preparing you, because God doesn't waste pain. And when he allows you to walk through fire, it's because he knows what you're made of. He knows that once you come out the other side, you'll never be the same. You'll be stronger, wiser, and more aligned with who you were always meant to be. There comes a moment after the heartbreak, after the manipulation, after the storm has passed, when you look around and realize you're still here. And that moment hits different, because for so long you were just surviving. You weren't living, you were enduring. Day after day, moment after moment, holding yourself together with invisible thread. But now the fog is lifting. The silence is peaceful instead of painful. The quiet doesn't echo with shame or confusion anymore. It holds space for clarity, for healing, for rediscovery. See, nobody tells you that healing isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes healing looks like eating alone in peace, like waking up without anxiety in your chest, like laughing at something small and realizing it's been a while. Sometimes healing comes in whispers, and that's okay, because it means you're rising. And don't mistake this rise for perfection. You still have scars. There are still days you feel the weight of what happened. Still memories that try to creep back in. But this time, you know the difference. You know who you are now. You know that your value isn't in how well you can hold someone else's chaos. Your worth isn't measured by how much pain you can tolerate. You were never meant to be a sponge for someone else's toxicity. You were meant to shine. And now that you're rising, you're starting to remember who you were before they tried to rewrite you. You're rediscovering your voice, not the one they silenced, but the one that speaks truth without fear. The one that says, I don't owe anyone my peace. The one that says, no more shrinking to make someone else feel big. You're finding your joy again, not the kind that depends on someone's approval, but the kind that bubbles up from your soul. You're starting to dream again, starting to believe in the version of yourself that was buried under people-pleasing and emotional survival. And that version of you, that version is powerful, that version is real. And what's beautiful is that you're not just rising for you, you're rising for every version of yourself that was told to stay small, for the little girl or boy who was made to feel invisible, for the soul that was taught love was something you had to earn. You're rising now with a sacred kind of fire. The kind that says never again. Because after the fall, after the breaking, after the empty spaces, they didn't leave you hollow. They made room for something new, for something better, for the kind of love that starts from within, for the kind of peace that can't be taken away by someone else's mood or manipulation, for the kind of identity that doesn't shift with someone's opinion. You're not who you were, you're more. You're wiser, softer in the right places, stronger where it counts. And even though the rise might be slow, even though you're still figuring it all out, make no mistake, you're rising. There comes a point where you stop living for their approval. You stop shrinking yourself to fit the version of you they found acceptable. Because the truth is, their opinion was never the measuring stick. Their validation was never the source. It just felt that way for a long time, didn't it? They trained you to question your intuition, to doubt your voice, to second guess the very gifts God placed in you, but no more. Because God's plan for your life was never based on how someone else saw you. It was based on how he made you. He didn't create you to live under someone's thumb, silenced and small. He created you with purpose, intention, and power. And that power doesn't depend on whether they understood you, whether they stayed, whether they approved. That power is already yours because he gave it to you. There's freedom in that realization. The kind of freedom that breaks chains you didn't even know you were still carrying. Chains of insecurity, of guilt, of feeling like you had to fix everything and everyone, even at the cost of your own peace. Chains that made you believe your love had to come with suffering. But now, you see the truth. You see that God was never asking you to be a martyr for someone else's brokenness. He was asking you to walk in alignment with him. And when you walk in alignment with God, you stop chasing people. You stop explaining your worth. You stop trying to prove that you're enough, because you finally know you already are. You're enough because he said so. You're chosen because he called you. You're loved because he made you. And no person, no narcissist, no past trauma can undo that truth. You've spent enough time being who they wanted you to be. Now it's time to be who God created you to be. And listen, when you step into that identity, people will fall away. Not everyone will clap. Not everyone will understand. That's okay. God isn't calling you to popularity. He's calling you to purpose. And sometimes purpose looks like walking alone for a little while. Sometimes it means losing what felt familiar in order to gain what's eternal. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them write their version of your story. Just remember, they don't hold the pen. God does. And the next chapter, the next season, it's not about survival. It's about thriving, about building, about blessing. You're not who you used to be, and you don't need to prove that to anybody. This is the part where you stop waiting for permission. This is the part where you rise, not in arrogance, but in anointing. Not in ego, but in identity. Because God's plan for your life has always been bigger than the pain, bigger than the lies, bigger than what they tried to reduce you to. And now it's your time.